Hi, Reggie. Please introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Hello, my name is Reggie Daniels. I'm a native of San Francisco. I'm 49 years old. My parents were all also born here, so I'm second generation. And my story is not unlike many of my peers. I grew up in the Potrero Hill Housing Project. Um, Although my family did live in the residential area, I spent a lot of time in the housing projects. And I was a graduate of Reardon High School and graduated with a pretty good GPA with the expectations of going to college. Shortly after graduating from Reardon, I got into a fist fight with a young man in the Potrero Hill housing projects. After that, his brothers came up. There were, at the time, I was about 17, and his brothers were grown men, and they all had weapons. And they surrounded the car that myself and a young lady was in, and they continued to fire into that car until their guns were emptied. I was shot in the shoulder, and that changed my outlook on life. Um, the problem for me was when I went to the hospital and talked to the police officers about what happened, they explained to me that I was in a drug-infested area and was probably the cause of my own victimization because I was probably in a gang or a drug dealer. And at that point, my mentor became the streets and a person who was well seasoned in the life and in the drug life. And so at that point, my life became all about guns and crime. And that went on for quite a period of time until I actually got sick and tired of being on that downward spiral, and I started to do something about it. And so here I am today.
So, you've shared your story about your involvement with gun violence. Can you give us more detail?
Yeah, my involvement with gun violence, I have been shot, and later on in my life, I actually shot a man. It was very difficult for me. I kept guns with me all the time. Um, when I actually harmed another individual like that, it was something that I never wanted to do. But once I did it, it seemed easier to carry a gun and be ready to hurt people with guns. Um, and so that went on. When I seen the what we call the opposition, if we had guns, we got busy, which means that we would shoot at each other or whatever it took to try to get at my enemy and make sure that I didn't get hurt. And so that was my life. And back then, you couldn't have told me much about change. I wasn't into change. I wasn't really into programs. I was very angry, but more so I was really deeply hurt. And I had no real place to talk about the hurt or no one to really talk about what was going on inside of me. Um,
You said the first time you shot someone or had to shoot someone, it was difficult. Talk to us about that.
yeah, the first time I shot someone, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I mean, it was terrifying, but I couldn't show that. I was in a position where someone had taken something from me and it was known, or from some people that I was organized with and it was known. And if I didn't respond and the streets was watching, I felt like there would have been more people trying to take advantage. And so I talked to that individual and I asked him for an apology, almost pleaded with him. But he continued to tell me that whatever I needed to do, I needed to do. And so at that point, I be honest. I prayed. I prayed. I said, God, please, because I know that once I done that, there was no turning back. And so he continued, and I began to shoot him, and I shot him several times from his waist up, And if he would have been standing there in front of me, I probably would have still been shooting. But he eventually ran, and he and I later on were able to reconcile because the doctor told him at the hospital that I could have taken his life if I meant to. And I did not mean to take his life. I really just wanted him to stop bullying the people that I was around and taking things from me and the people around me. And so that was the first time that I shot someone. And it was very hard for me. And it's still hard for me to this day.
In hindsight, had you forgiven the person who shot you, how might that have changed the path of your life?
Yes, had I have known back then when I was young, in my 20s, about forgiveness and the importance of it, I probably would not have suffered the many years of going in and out in the cycle of prison. And so what forgiveness done for me was gave me an opportunity to work on my life, because what I had done was become just like my perpetrators. I actually started packing guns and selling drugs. And so that hatred led me to become more like them. So forgiveness gave me an opportunity to embrace my greatness. And my dream was to go back and finish school, and that's what I'm actually able to do. So I'm forgiving.
Can you tell us about prison life?
Oh yeah, prison life, wow. H20210 was my number that was given to me. They took my name away the day I went to jail and gave me a number. And I remember that day that I was in West Block, they call it, and you're in there 23 hours a day. You come out for breakfast, you get your lunch, and then you come out for dinner, a total of 45 minutes. You're in the cell the rest of the time. And I recall the horrible things, just being in a situation where I was on a tier with 50 or so men, and we would have to shower in one area where there were only 10 shower heads. And so many of us, with myself for the first time around other men, having to take a shower that way or decide to be unclean. And so it was very humiliating. That was just the beginning of it, but all along the way, it was just a bunch of men that I seen that were pretending to be tough, but were actually hurt, away from their families, who were sad, afraid, and scared. Well, I could speak for myself, but actually people that I knew was close. So we would be hard by day, and at night, I would act hard by day, but by night, I would lay on my pillow and cry often about being away from home and being away from my family the first time I went to prison. And it just progressively got worse.
So you mentioned where you are now. Where are you now, and how did you get there?
So change, yeah. So where I am today is the result of change, absolute empowerment and investment in my future. And it started from really experiencing the impact of being involved in gangs and drugs. And that left me incarcerated at the age of 40, where I started to get treatment for my substance abuse, which I did not think that I was a substance abuser. But oftentimes selling drugs and being up is just like using drugs. And so I did indulge in drugs, and also I had a history of violence. So I got training and got some support and took classes in violence prevention. And at that point I started an internship, which led me to the opportunity to do a play, which resulted in me being accepted into University of San Francisco, where I started to complete my undergraduate work, and I went on to complete my grad work. So I got my bachelor's there, my master's, and I'm currently working on my doctorate. I'm also employed as a violence intervention specialist at the same program where I once got treatment. So that's what change was like.
What message do you have for young men and women involved in gun violence?
The message that I have for young women and men that are involved in gun violence is that there is a whole life waiting for you outside of that lifestyle. It's very dangerous, and from what I've seen being in it and also working in prevention, is that it just leads to detriment, anger, more bitterness, more impact. So my message is that life can be beautiful if you are willing to dream, and sometimes you have to let go of the past, anger, and resentment in order to experience wonderful things. And so that is my message and my hope for all the young people today, is that they will be able to move forward into their future.